Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Today we're going over my Cav and Mage lineups for the Dragonsiege KVK. We'll go over the pairings, the artifacts, the Warpets, and finally we'll touch on the talent builds for all my Cav and Mage marches. Okay, and so why don't we start with the Cav marches? I only have one Cav preset. It's, preset one because I kind of consider myself a Cav main at this point. Now, before we go through the presets, I'll just point something out that seems pretty obvious, but just in case you didn't know. When you have your multi-presets here, you always want to have it going from strongest to weakest, because if for whatever reason you can only send out a few of your marches, you want the strongest marches going out, right? So if I have, a Legion in the Bastion holding it down, and then I also have something in the Alliance RSS Center, and I can only send out 3 Legions, these are the 3 I want going out, right? Because these, from strongest to weakest, that's how I have my marches arranged. Okay. So we'll start with, on the left here, and you'll see most of these marches, nothing too exotic. For the most part, they sort of are matched with their generational pairs, but obviously we have some exceptions there. Agnar Freya, they're super strong. I'm a huge advocate of them. Now, I do play League of Order, so I have melee Cav. Agnar is much stronger with melee Cav than he is with Elk Rider Cav because of his, charge effect from his skills. So, maybe a little bit not as strong as if you're playing, if you're playing the elves, but hey, still a great march, right? Second march here, again, I have the generational heroes paired together. These guys, I would say, are about 90% as strong as these guys. So they do really well for me as there as well. Now, the one thing weird about these two is they have Lunaris here, and you can see I have it exemplar and I have it maxed out. Lunaris gives you a movement speed buff when you're stealth, and obviously only Nea gives you stealth. It's a little awkward, right? Because when these guys are not in combat, when you're traveling to combat, the movement speed works great. But once you're in combat, when you're trying to like break away from combat, and as Cav, you do that frequently, these guys are going to move a little bit slower than the rest of them until they get, the stealth effect off. And, moving away from combat, this can kind of be problematic because these guys can be, singled out and killed a little bit easier than the rest of my marches. The way I sort of offset that is these guys move a little bit faster than the most of the rest of my marches when they're stealth. It means they move a little bit slower when they're not stealth, but it's sort of just how I, split the difference there. Having a very good Auric Warhound with him, it performs great. I'm very happy with this march as well. All right. So the third pair here, and this is like a big step down, and I kind of consider Urag sort of the bridge point between the G4 and G5 Cav and the earlier Cav. All the earlier Cav before Urag, and honestly to include Tobin, is just so much weaker than the G4, G5 Cav. And Urag is not as good as these guys in my experience, but he is like pretty close, and I'm very happy with him. Okay. Now I have Urag paired with Marduk right now. One of the reasons that's true is Urag, he has basically 2 weaknesses. The first weakness is he's kind of slow. He's not critically slow. He does have a skill that boosts his movement speed, but his talent tree, it's just hard to get enough movement speed out of it. In fact, for the march speed I want with my marches, it's impossible to get it with Uruk himself. And so I have to give him a deputy that gives him some movement speed. And lately I've been going with Marduk, and I think that works pretty well. Now, Marduk is a bit of a casino hero because his skills, his first skill here, it sort of gives you one of these 3 effects, and you never know for sure what you're going to get. It can work fine, but it's, Marik's just okay. I have him here mostly for the movement speed. Now you can see I have the Thunder Drake with them. I have the Cav build on my Thunder Drake, and I want this on my Marduk, Urag March. One of the things that I normally have with Urag is just a hero enhancement build to give him a little extra movement speed. So the Thunder Drake doesn't have any movement speed on it, but actually I'm kind of fine with that because this thing has a very strong buff effect for all of my marches. And so I'm fine with this guy trailing behind a little bit because I don't want him focused. Maybe I shouldn't give that away, but that is what it is. Okay. The fourth march here, I have Ferondil with Tobin. Tobin here is just basically because I need someone there, and Tobin's okay. He's the best of my remaining marches. I have Greymar's Warhammer on that. I maintain that this is the strongest artifact in the game if you have it exemplar, because it is a 6-second stun. That is super powerful. And I have a very good Berserk Fade Drake with Ferondil. Tobin doesn't give me debuffs to power the Berserk Fandrake, but what I found is that Ferondel all by himself, can get this guy to max stacks most of the time. So I don't need a hero that gives me debuffs. I want a little bit more sort of survivability with this march, and Tobin gives me that. So, he's my best option there. Okay, the last march, this is sort of an art utility artifact, Storm Arrows. I've really come around Storm Arrows. I'm a big fan of them. I have Emrys here. I think the reason I have Emrys is because I want this march in particular to move faster than everyone. That's sort of why I have Theo here, because his skills give him a movement speed buff. So I want this guy moving faster than anyone for two reasons. First of all, this is the guy that interrupts you from running away, and so he needs to get there first so he can blink in front of you. So this guy does need to move faster than everyone. And second, I want you focusing this Legion against everyone else, because this Legion does substantially less damage than everyone else. And so a lot of players will target the first march they see, and I want that to be my weakest march so all my stronger marches can get their damage off. Okay, most of the Warpets for these guys are pretty standard, and I think you've seen them mostly before. Let's take a quick look at the Thunderdrake here. Now you can see I have the Electrostorm package. I'm going to get the third Electrostorm skill, Intense Electrostorm. It's just not available in my KVK yet when I'm making this video. It becomes available really soon. As soon as I get it, I'm certainly putting on this pet, probably replacing Draconic Rage for it. Okay, so let's talk about the Mage setups here, and I've got two Mage presets. The first one is my 5 Mage March. G5 Mages, super strong. They get about 20% more merits than my other Mages when I send them out. Occasionally the G4 Mages can be close with them, but these guys, super strong performing, and I'm not even done with my Cantaman here. He's not underdeveloped, 553 is still really good. But haven't awakened him yet. Can't wait till I finish him off, because I expect them to get even stronger then, right? Pretty standard setup here. The Magic Fox, the Doom Bracers here performing great. Okay, so Young Ming, is a really strong mage hero, and he works with just about anyone. When I have the 5 Mage Marches out, I do put him with Grimora. I think she is the, by a slight margin, best pair for Young Ming. But there are a lot of mages that work with him. If you don't have Grimoire developed, you can still go with, for example, Thundolin works great, Thalia works great, Valen works pretty well. A lot of great choices here. Can't really do wrong with that. Okay. The third mage pair here, Bertrand and Selûne. Now, in my season, we have this policy here. Let me pull it out for you. Wings Unbound, and basically it means you don't need Selûne to be flying to get the full effect of her skills here. This is only in the Dragonsiege KVK. It's not in any other KVKs, at least not any other KVKs yet. So for this season, you don't really need to pair Selûne with a flying hero. But this is sort of where she fits in. I have her with Bertrand right now. Now, one of the things that I like is I like my mages to stick together. And when these two are actually flying, they'll take different paths. They move a little bit slower sometimes because they're not on roads. But of course, they're not affected by obstacles. And what I found in a prior season is that when these guys, were flying, they drift out off on their own, and that was less than ideal sometimes. So for this season and this season only, I have these guys running Vestals. Obviously, Vestals are a little bit inferior to Celestials, and obviously this is only a problem if you're playing League of Order. But you want to have at least one March of Vestals among your mages because it gives you a buff to other mages. And the other thing is, like, if you sort of intermix them, you can last longer, right? Because you're not just running full on Celestials. Now, having said that, the other thing I'll say is, like, not counting this season in which you don't need Selena to fly, but all the other seasons when her skills, are depending on flying, you can only really play Selena as a mage if you're playing League of Order. She is a great hero if she's actually flying or you have the skill, the policy that makes her not need to fly. But otherwise, have her flying because she's super strong there. Okay. Now, for this March, I have a Shadow Phaedrake. It's one that I built a long time ago. It's okay. It's not amazing, and I'm not going to do any additional work on it. I do think for Selûne, the Shadow Phaedrake is the best pet option. Now, first of all, obviously, you typically need a pet that flies. But the second thing is, if you look at Selûne's toolkit here, it's all like single target damage focused. It does a lot of damage, but the Shadow Phaedrake helps enhance single target damage. It's good with Burt too, so I think the Shadow Phaedrake is the best long-term pet for Selûne. And, I have a Shadow Orb here, just kind of a standard, artifact for Burt. Works great with Selûne too. Okay, my fourth Mage March, this is Mu Thea. I know a lot of people move Thea around, but I consistently find this is the best pair for Mu. Once again, this is League of Order dependent because you need to have Celestials to fully unlock all of Thea's skills, but these guys do great. Now, it is a bit more defensive March, which is why I've given them a very strong Sapphire Phaedrake, because this thing does a ton of damage. Mu, as I have her built out, is a bit of a rage generation machine. So she builds out, she gets Thea's shields up. I have Thea awakened at this point, and so she'll shield another legion as well. So a lot of good support from other legions. It also, gets the Sapphire Phaedrake firing a lot. So these guys do very well, although they have fallen behind the G5 and the G4 mages. All right, and in last place, I have Lilia and Thundolin, and you'll notice that Valen has been cut. Now, I like Valen, and actually when I had Lilia with Valen, these guys would get a bit more merits. Going to Thundolin here has actually decreased my merits, not by a lot, but slightly on this March. But Thundolin has that very powerful debuff she puts on targets, increases magic damage, but also more importantly, prevents targets from going into buildings, going to rallies, that kind of thing. And very, very often I find it's extremely useful to get that debuff off. And just like for my generic marches, I wanted to have Thundolin in here just so I have a way to, stop people from reinforcing the bastion, reinforcing the rally, something like that. Even if I don't always need that, it's always nice to have that just in my preset. Okay, like I said, I have two mage presets. The second preset is sort of have an infantry escort with it. Pretty similar here. The only things I'll point out here is in this mage preset, like Lilia's cut completely. And I wanted, like I said before, I want to get Thundolin out here. I think Grimoire with Young Ming is slightly better than than with Young Ming with Thundolin. But the debuff itself is just so important. I think I want it in both my mage presets all the time, no matter what. Everything else here is pretty standard. Like I said before, these guys are using Vestals just so they'll stay grounded because I don't need them to fly this season. And also I want the Vestals to give the buff to the other mage legions around. Okay, so those were my Cav and Mage presets for the Dragonsiege KVK. Interesting KVK. I'll have some commentary about it later on. fairly happy with how my presets are performing. Intend to basically keep it that way for future KVKs. Obviously, that'll adjust as we get new heroes, as the policies change, etc. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. And until next time, you stay classy, Belleron.